Well, it's wonderful to see y'all again. I love seeing you. I know that we do this every week, and I won't get tired of it as long as you don't get tired of it. So thank you, friend. Shabbat Shalom, and a happy Father's Day to all. It seems like just a month or so ago we were wishing all the mothers out there a great day. Well, happy day to everyone, whatever kind of human, father, grandperson, or mother you are. And thank you for continuing to watch and listen and enjoy the show. Now, either about 40 of you watched last week or one kind person watched 40 times. And whichever it is, thank you, thank you, thank you. And before we end today, and I'll remind you, we'll all get together and say, Happy Father's Day, Dad. Thank you. We all have or had fathers. The other day, I was watching TV with my dogs. It was on the weekend, Saturday or Sunday. And I think it was the Fox movie channel. And there were biblical movies all day long. And I sat there and I watched. I couldn't pull away. And it was great. They don't make them like that anymore. And some were better than others. But they all tried so hard to get the story across. I was talking to one of our viewers the other night. And we were talking about how many levels there are to each of the Torah parshas. They can be simple stories to entertain and teach children, and they can reflect lessons in life or lessons in the greater scheme of things with a deep psycho-spiritual meaning. Remember, the Zohar says that each text can be studied in 4 different ways. Peshat, the plain or simple literal meaning, just reading it and taking literal meaning from what you've read. Remez, the allegorical reading that you get from the hints and allusions of what's said in each section. Darash, the metaphorical reading that's usually found in the rabbinic midrash. And Sod, the hidden secret Kabbalistic mysteries. And I know you each get something different from these than you got before, and I want to keep encouraging you to continue to get something different all the time. As you change, your views change, and your wants and needs change. And don't let anyone ever tell you that you're wrong. We learn all the time. And you know what? I think I learned why sometimes there's strange vocal glitches with the videos. And of course I could be completely wrong, but I have been recording these using wireless technology. And I wonder if I were wired in a video sense, whether the signal would be more stable. As we improve our technology, we will find out. 1967 was a great year for music. It was a great year for a lot of things. The Beatles recorded Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, and I still view it as a pivotal piece in music. And although I'm saying that it really doesn't have much to do with this week's Parsha, but I see, and you probably notice Rocky hanging there in the background. And Buffalo Springfield released a song which would become an anthem for what it's worth. There's something happening here, but what it is ain't exactly clear. There's battle lines being drawn, and nobody's right if everybody's wrong. What a song. And I can't think of a better tune to march into this week's Parsha with than that. Shilach, send. There's definitely something happening here. And there's something happening with our webpage and format, friends. There are changes in the works. There will be music. We will be on YouTube, which some of you have been asking for, and some other things which, quite frankly, I can't fully remember right now. But over the next few weeks, we will be working very hard, I might add, to improve our ability to satisfy your wants and needs. And don't you think it's nice that somebody actually cares enough to ask what your wants and needs are? Don't forget to keep letting me know how I can serve you better. I will continue to try and answer questions. We will, as a community, continue to learn, to grow, to share together. We celebrate birthdays. We honor the departed. We are totally inclusive. And we pray for the health and well-being for any in need. Mishaberach Avotenu. Bless those in need of healing with renewal of body and spirit. Well, the send in the title of this week's Parsha is about another misinterpreted word. And friends, it's a huge misinterpreted word. This is the Parsha that talks of the mission of the spies sent into Canaan. And so this Parsha is normally referred to as the spies Parsha. And that's wrong. And it gives the wrong connotation. It's also about the rebellion by the people resulting in Moses interceding for them And in God's decision that these witnesses to history, the wilderness generation, the people who were present for the revelation, will not enter the promised land. And friends, it's about an incredible penalty for Sabbath violation, and it's the only time we are given a reason for commandment. You may have noticed changes beginning to take place in the stories, in the people, and in the presentation of laws, rituals, morals, and ethics. But the biggest change you've probably noticed, but aren't sure what to make of, is the change in God. In the beginning, good phrase, I'll have to remember that, God created and walked and talked with certain people. He clothed Adam and Eve when he expelled them from the garden. He protected Cain from death after Cain killed Abel. He saved Noah and humanity and actually shut the window to the Tabah or ark himself. He promised to Abraham greatness. He pretended to bargain in order to agree to save Sodom. He made Joseph the father of Pharaoh. And friends, that is a fascinating statement in the Torah that has amazing historical value and is a discussion of its own. And now he has freed a nation from constriction and promised that freedom to all subsequent generations who observe the festival of egoless bread and recognize freedom in their lives. And he reveals himself and his words to the entire public instead of only to an individual. But the change has already started to take place. And you probably began to notice it. He brought the plagues and hardened Pharaoh's heart to show his own greatness. He got pissed at people questioning him, threatened to kill everybody several times for smaller slights than before. And we see God becomes even more anthropomorphic and parent-like, as in this parsha when he becomes fed up with the rebellious Israelites. And we see Moses affecting God's decision, something that man hasn't really been able to do before. Not even Abraham actually ever affected God's decisions. It's time different. Many people see the Torah as linear story, but instead see it as emphasizing certain things at certain times. And sometimes coterminous events take place but are told slightly out of sequence. It was an edited book. Perhaps our need to see linearly affects how and what we see. We like a timeline. Past at one end, future at the other. Or is it future at one end and past at the other? That's what the Greeks called chronos time, chronological. And it was only one of the methods they had for measuring time. And that's not the only time we have. We have kairos time. That's another story. We will soon see the Korah and Dathan rebellion, two separate rebellions actually against two separate groups, although they've been blended into one, occurring while Moses is on the mountain and Aaron builds the golden calf. And all of that is prefaced by this famous story of the spies, since it resulted in the rebellion and condemnation of a generation, thereby making that incredible census which opened numbers now becoming completely undone by death. This so-called story of the spies was really about scouts, and that is the word used, and they were each chieftains of the 12 tribes. These were esteemed noble leaders. They were gone for 40 days, and friends, we all know that 40 is a formulaic number in biblical lore. Since these were chieftains, they were not really on a spy mission. And interestingly enough, the listed names are not the ones previously mentioned as chieftains, nor do they appear anywhere else. And that suggests that this is an actual list, and there's authenticity to that. The places mentioned, the key city being Hebron, ties back to Abraham's claim since he bought the cave, Machpelah, the cave of the double tombs in Hebron for burial. And so this became a going home story. And the people they encountered, the descendants of the Nephilim, the giants from Genesis 6, who were the children of the angels marrying the daughters of man. And we will be confronted by another giant a little later, Goliath, the last of these descendants. You and I have memories longer than the road that stretches out ahead. We're on our way home. We're on our way home. We're going home. friends, these weren't spies. Even Rashi proposed that these were men of stature, and the editors added a name that was not included in the original list. Hosea became Joshua. Joshua succeeded Moses as the supreme leader. And that was an established tradition. But friends, what was his merit? What allowed him to be the only person other than Caleb to be born in Egypt and live? He didn't participate in the golden calf incident since he waited on the mountain with Moses. And don't forget, the Torah as we know it comes from the first exile period. And it was more or less made up of two separate Torahs. And there was a part of one of them which actually omitted the golden calf story because Aaron was the villain, and that wasn't acceptable. So a reason had to be found to extol Joshua. It was only when the editing took place that these different versions and different stories were fused together to make the Torah as we know it. And that's also one of the reasons the Torah doesn't always seem to follow a normal chronological pattern, and why we have two creation stories in Genesis and two tales of the flood woven together, but both with different pairs of animals. This was the land flowing with milk and honey, where it took 2 men to carry the cluster of grapes, and this land was described as being a death trap. Even if they got a foothold, the land would consume them through the savage conflict and warfare. And friends, some would say that it still does. These tribal leaders, with their role of observation, not espionage, failed as leaders. Their negativity when they returned is all the more devastating to the people who were in need of inspiration. This is not about poor intelligence. This is about fear. This is about a failure to lead and a failure to encourage. And the 40 days they're away became a year for a day for the wandering, and only after God debated whether he shouldn't just wipe them out. God says to Moses in Numbers 14:11, "How long will this people despise me, and how long will they not trust me? With all the signs that I have done in their midst, let me strike them with the plague and dispossess them, and I shall make you a nation greater and mightier than they." Well, he doesn't wipe them all out, but besides, the generation of the Exodus will not see the promised land. They will die. And yet he still instructs Moses to tell them what to sacrifice when they come to the promised land. This contributes to the sense of a time schism in how this book was put together. We are witnessing the change. The all-knowing, all-seeing, all-powerful is changing. This book is about Moses, the priesthood, and the laws. The God of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and Joseph is gone. And this one is now going to begin to fade from sight. And it'll be up to man to make more decisions. And again, there is an emphasis on what was emphasized last week and will be emphasized again and again. It was also so prevalent in the book of Ruth, which we talked about last week. The rule of one law for the people and for the sojourner. One statute for you and for the sojourner who resides, a perpetual statute. One teaching and one practice shall there be for you and for the sojourner who resides with you. There's been apologetic commentary on this egalitarian formula, but there's nothing to apologize for. There should be one law for all. This is reiterated 4 ways in this section. And this, my friends, is an essential principle of the Torah. Israelites are not privileged over anyone else. A country must treat everyone who lives there fairly and equally under one law. Remember, one love, one heart. Are we? Are you? Would you want to be if you were the stranger? And then we see a very strange example of someone who broke the Sabbath law, applicable to all. A man was found gathering wood on the Sabbath, and he's brought to Moses, and God says to Moses, the man is doomed to die. Let all the community pelt him with stones outside the camp. Wow! The man is to be killed. It didn't matter whether this man, did something inadvertently, or for good reason, or why. This was a prohibited act. And we will be told again and again that if there were only one commandment to be observed, it is to observe the Sabbath. Why? The Sabbath, my friends, And Sabbath simply means 7. It's the sacred time and sacred space of creation. And you will see that sacred time and sacred space, even in your lives today, are the most important things that you can continue to observe and give yourself. They allow you to reset, to observe, to recharge and regenerate, to appreciate, to contemplate, to regain your reason to believe. As the great Tim Hardin sang, if I listen long enough to you, I'd find a way to believe that it's all true. Friends, who are the people going to listen to? Who are they going to believe? They fight God. They fight Moses. They are still slaves with a slave mentality. They could have had the land and lived, but they were afraid and said they would die and their children would be made captives. So now they will die, but their children will live, and one day they will be free in the land. This is a demonstration of how hard it can be to be rid of a slave mentality. And we all know people who are still fighting to get rid of their slave mentalities. They're not ready for the life of free people in a land of their own. So that will be left to their children, who will grow up not knowing the experience of having been slaves. Reversing an entire generation's experience is not an easy thing. We've seen it with the impact on the Holocaust survivors. Some become more religious. Some reject religion completely. Some cannot speak of it. Some speak of it constantly. Some return to the sites of suffering, while others never go back. It affects medical decisions, child-rearing, trust of others, work, thoughts, opinions, memories. Their children carry guilt and obligation, but can experience a freedom that their parents could never know. Fear, my friends, the enemy we saw so much of in Genesis and in Exodus, the great thief of time, generated the lies that were told when the chieftains returned. And so they were doomed. They struggled, they feared the stranger. And as Traffic sang, struggling with confusion, disillusionment too can turn a man into a shadow, crying out from pain. Through his nightmare vision, he sees nothing, only well. Blind with the beggar's mind, he's but a stranger. He's but a stranger to himself. Don't be a stranger to yourself or to anyone. Relish your freedom. Welcome the stranger. Blessings to you all. And friends, let's all get together and say, Happy Father's Day, Dad. Thank you. Shabbat Shalom. Thank you for joining me. I look forward to seeing you again next week. Blessings to you all.